Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with Kansas City jazz violinist Adam Galblum. He has a great story about his 2015 CD, Down to the Wire Stringband Tribute to the music of John Mayer. These days, he is a staple of a thriving Kansas City jazz scene, and he grew up in Overland Park, Kansas. He was actually a student of the first-generation Count Basie Band alum and legendary jazz violin pioneer Claude Fiddler Williams. That was back in the 1990s. Then he went on to attend the Berklee College of Music in Boston and lived in the Denver area from 2005 to 2014, touring nationally with bluegrass bands. These days, you can catch him as the band leader of the Hot Club KC and the Hot Club Trio, along with being a part of the duo Splitting Atoms. He talks about all of this and so much more, so please get to know him and dig this interview, my friends.
So cool, man. Well, Adam, thanks for taking a minute up for Neon Jazz. And like I said, it was great to catch you live a few Sundays ago. Huge fan of the jazz violin, and it just seems to be one of those instruments, especially in Kansas City, you don't see that often.
Yeah, for sure. Not anymore. You know, not since Claude left. I mean, there are some players here, but it's one of the rarer instruments in jazz for sure.
So the one thing I always start off with are projects that have been done, and I know that you did a tribute to John Mayer. So my question is, talk to me a little bit about how that came about and anything that might be on the horizon.
The John Mayer project was interesting, and the funny story about that, which is really kind of mind-blowing, is that he reached out to me afterward, and I didn't see his message for like 2.5 years, okay? Wow. It was an Instagram direct message. I had actually sent him an Instagram direct message, and I never used really that platform to message. And at the time, it was after the album came out, and I had spent quite a bit of energy communicating with various John Mayer fan groups online, trying to get the word out so the album would get to John Mayer. And I had like various colleagues and friends who had kind of access to him, like, you know, be like, oh yeah, he's got it. Like, I would be like, so gave it to him, like I gave it to, you know, like, so I'm pretty sure he had the record, but I did all this legwork to get it to him. And the reason I mentioned the fan groups is because I had been in communication with a lot of these sort of admins of these John Mayer pages. And I remember the day that I got a message from one of them. I saw it pop in on like a notification or something, and it was like, the message said, "Thanks for the love. How can I support you?" And it was from an account called John Mayer. And Joe, I think that what must have happened was, this was like 2016 when this message came in. It was like July 2016, actually. I didn't notice it until like, whatever, that would be 18, really, a year ago. I think at the time, Instagram had not yet implemented its, the little blue, like, verification, certification mark that they put under celebrity accounts, like after the name. And you see that little blue mark and you know it's the real thing. Yeah. I don't think they were using that yet, because I swear to you, if I had seen that, I would have been, holy shit.
Yeah, right.
And I'm pretty sure like that what my reaction was when I saw that come in was, I'm totally over this. Give me a break. Now I got somebody calling themselves John Mayer, asking how they can support me. And I've just put all this effort into this, and I'm just kind of over it. It was the summer. I was doing new things. I was in the Hot Club. I was just kind of ready to move on. And I swear to you, I think what happened was that I just missed the fact that it was him. And then 2 years later, I'm in my DMs and I see the blue hashtag, "Thanks for the love, how can I support you?" And it was as if I had never seen the message before. Wow. And I almost had a heart attack. And and of course wrote him back and didn't hear anything. It was, that ship had sailed. But it was just crazy, one of those things.
Wow. That is wild, man, because I get it, and back in 2016 it's hard to even think that, but it was kind of primitive on that platform, and I don't use those to message. So I've missed things like that too, where people will say things and I'm like, oh, it was a year or two ago, and then, yeah, the ship's gone, but you got a response from John Mayer and he was on board, so that in itself should have just been absolute validation that what you were doing was spot on.
Well, cool. Yeah, it's nice of you to say that. I definitely felt that way. It was an opportunity missed for sure. And, but yeah, the goal had been achieved. I just wasn't able to see the fruition of the goal because I missed the message.
Yeah.
Of all the messages that I dealt with during that time for that project, that's the one that I had to miss. But anyway, it's funny how things work sometimes.
It's Murphy's Law, man, and Murphy is always lurking. It's wild.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
were you born and raised here in Kansas City?
Raised, not born. I was born in Baltimore. Family moved out when I was about 4 years old. But I grew up in like Overland Park, and got into violin when I was real young, and music in general. And
what jazz music in the very beginning were you getting into that really inspired you?
My parents were not jazz fans. They weren't even really that big of music fans. I mean, music was in my mom's side of the family. She was a pianist. My grandmother, her mother, was a Juilliard trained pianist actually, and then taught mostly for her career. They just weren't big music fans. I mean, and so even though I was playing violin and kind of discovering things on my own, it wasn't really until I think my senior year of high school, maybe junior year, that a musician friend of mine at the time introduced me to Kind of Blue, like a lot of people, and that was the first record jazz record that I got into. I remember what he said to me too. He was a piano player himself, and he said, "Listen to the piano."
Nice.
And that was cool. Yeah, and I'm sure that's like almost a rite of passage to be handed that record. So that was the story.
That was my baptismal for sure. I understand. So prior to going to the Berklee College of Music, did you know that music and being a performer was going to be your life?
Yes. I mean, it was never really anything else that I was as interested in or I wanted to do as much. Or it's just music has been the thing that's always kind of been there, and I'm always wanting to do it. I'm always looking for ways to do it and people to do it with. It's taking me on some adventures, and it's just kind of how it is.
So when you left to go to Berklee, what did you learn there? I mean, that's obviously one of the most premier institutions for jazz musicians on the planet. What did you get from that experience?
Well, the thing about my time at Berklee was, and let me preface this by saying that, like anything, Berklee can give you what you're capable of getting at the time. Like, it'll meet you where you're at, sort of thing. And some people go to Berklee kind of fully formed, and they go there for the connections, and they go there to kind of take that next step in their already established thing, or just to move to Boston and kind of be, like I said, with a connection. I was really green. Like I said, I didn't really get, it would even really become aware of my affinity to jazz until pretty shortly before I went to Berklee. So I was quite green when I got there. I was fortunate to be able to work with Matt Glazer there, who's still the chair of the strings department. He's been there for a long time. Man, I learned a lot. I mean, I learned how to be in a session or in a jam session, and how that works. And I mean, it was really my training. It was cool.
You go from there, you move to Denver, you're doing some gigs, a lot of gigs with bluegrass bands. Talk to me about the time in Denver and kind of how that helped you as a musician. My
time in Denver was, first of all, it was really fun. I mean, that's kind of the thing that kept me doing it. It was a time in my life when I wanted to have a lot of fun before I wouldn't be able to have a lot of fun anymore. And so I kind of did that for a while. But it was, the thing that I learned most in Denver and Colorado in general was just a little bit of the professional aspect of the music business. I played with groups that did tours a lot. So I would teach lessons when I was home. I would teach private lessons. I had a lot of students. But then I would go on the road with bands. I was able to just kind of turn the lessons off for that time. I would say, your instructor is going to go play some music now. I'll see you when I get back, kind of thing. And that's kind of how it was. So I just kind of learned how to put on a show, like how all the back end stuff that goes into it. Everything from sound production to logistical things, and sound production meaning like how to operate a PA, which comes in really handy for my current band, because we do a lot of private work that's not at a club, like a hot club does, that's not at a venue, a bar or club or whatever. And so we have to bring our own sound system, and I didn't have to just figure it out as I went. I already had learned a lot of that stuff from working with bands in Colorado. It just kept me playing. I was playing a lot. It was fun.
You had some time with the legendary institution, jazz violin pioneer Claude Fiddler Williams here in Kansas City. You were a first-generation student of the Count Basie alum band. Talk to me about what you learned from him, what that was like.
Man, it's funny. Like, in a lot of ways, I feel like it's a lot of the seeds that were planted during that time in me, as it were, are sort of at this time kind of bearing some fruit. Like there's some kind of cycle, like time cycle or time lapse, time delay sort of thing that occurred. It was really potent when it happened. And I definitely have really vivid memories of certain things like, after each lesson, because I would visit him during the summertime. I would be back from Berklee or whatever, and I'd go see Claude and do our lessons. And so it was summertime, and after each of our lessons, I would go over to Loose Park, because he lived just east of the plaza. And so I would drive over to Loose Park and get my violin out and walk around the park with my violin playing, like strolling kind of. Really just playing the stuff that he had shown me. I was so inspired. Like it really, really turned me on, like musically and creatively. And I would just go to the park and walk around and just like play the shit he was showing me. And he would really just show me stuff. It was a really direct lesson experience. There wasn't a whole lot of talking. I mean, there was some, but there was not a lot of it. There certainly wasn't a lesson plan. It was really just like two of us with our violins. Sometimes there'd be like a daytime soap on the TV with the sound off that he would kind of like sort of just unattentively look at while we were playing. Other times he would be really engaged with me. But we'd have our violins out and he would just play something and I'd play back. Or he would shred through a tune. Like I had cassette tapes of our lessons, and when I listen to them, I'm always really impressed at how like he would really just like he would shred at these lessons. Like I don't know a lot of teachers that during their like just daytime lesson they'd get out and just play as if they were like on stage. But he kind of did. Like he really played for me, like in his living room, and then he would break it apart and just play little licks and things and stuff. And he had such a sound and such a way of generating sound that is so unique, and it was certainly unique to me at the time. I tell the story that he took my violin one time and just played an open string, and it like blew my mind. Like just the way he generated sound from the instrument was completely mind blowing. And so it was never like a, what are we going to work on kind of thing. It was just, he would play stuff that he played and I would play it back to him and just we'd go back and forth. It was really cool.
You play around, I mean, it seems like your schedule is, you're pretty busy and you're around town quite a bit. You're going to play prior to the Hot Sardine show at the Folly on the 16th, this Saturday. So kind of talk to me a little bit about your live performance schedule. You seem like you stay pretty busy.
Yeah. Hot Club has been fortunate to generate quite a bit of interest with private bookings, which are anything from the well-known corporate event that people talk about. We do a lot of corporate events, which can be kind of really fun, and then just fundraisers and galas and client appreciation dinners, and, just all kinds of different stuff. Wedding receptions. So it's cool. We enjoy all of it. And then, we of course keep a monthly gig at the Phoenix downtown, at 8th and Central, where we do a monthly first Saturday, kind of feature performance. And I kind of think of that as the place that people can come and see us if they want to check us out. Maybe, hire us or something. If they want to see us first, they can come out and check us out there. But we certainly don't, we don't really play a ton as a quartet. We don't saturate, here. We just kind of keep that limited and then do a lot of private stuff.
So what do you like best about Kansas City?
It's the history and the culture. And what I mean by that is just, it's funny. When I was in Denver, it seemed like everybody was new to town. Everybody's always new to town or passing through. It's such a Denver was such a destination, or is such a destination place, that people, I was one of those people, sort of looking for adventure, looking for kind of fun and excitement. It just, people gravitate there. So it doesn't feel very rooted, whereas Kansas City feels very rooted. The downside to that, I guess, is, obviously there's not a whole lot to do, especially outdoors, like kind of reason why people do flock to places like Denver. It keeps Kansas City available to us who are here because it's not overcrowded. It's not expensive to live here. And I just, when you ask what I like about it, it's like I say, it's the people that are here have been here a long time. And everybody has stories, and there are legacies, there are musical legacies and lineages, musical lineages. And that's really valuable and really important, because you can't just make that up. You can't manufacture it. You can't just decide to do it. It's got to be something that emerges over time and sustains itself, and has to have value for it to really carry forward. And so when I think about all of the great musicians who have played here, and what Kansas City's role in, Black American music and jazz, the current situation, I think it's important to uphold, what has come before. And so that's what I like about it. I think it's a special place for those reasons. And I'm happy to have grown up here and proud to do my part and to do what I can to help keep it great.
So what was one of the first live jazz shows you saw that really blew your mind?
That's a great question. I don't know that there's a first one that stands out necessarily, but going to see Claude play was always really, really special. And sometimes he would invite me to come up and play a little bit. It wasn't really playing with him as much as it was him taking a break, because he was advanced in age. So he'd say, "I'll go up and play a little bit." He'd sit down, But yeah, I mean, watching Claude play was incredible.
Basically, what I'm asking you is this: jazz is always, even in the early days, from the beginnings when it was really popular to now when there's not as many people listening to jazz. Jazz has always been strong. There's always been a lot of musicians, a lot of creative minds, a lot of listeners that want to get involved. My question to you is this: why is jazz always going to be strong? Because deep down, I believe there is always going to be a strength. There's always going to be innovation. Jazz will always march on. Why is that?
Yeah, you know what? I certainly can't speak for everyone, and you're not asking me to. I can only speak for myself, and I will. And before I do, I wanted to say it reminds me of a great quote that I just read in Branford Marsalis did a Downbeat interview, and he said something like, "People are always asking me if jazz is gonna, survive," and he said something like, he goes, "I only need 5 people. Because I just need 5 people in my band." He's like, then he gave some kind of like percentage about how many people there are in the world versus how many jazz fans there are. He's like, and that's about right. And he goes, and as long as that amount of people still feel the way they do about jazz and that number stays the same, we'll be just fine. He's like, I only need 5. Because I don't need 5,000,
Yeah.
So it was cool. Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. And as far as I can say for myself, I think, as a lifetime musician and someone that really has only been into jazz for the kind of second half of my life, and I'm 40, and it's assuming that I got into it around 18. Actually, I'm 41. I had a birthday, and it's really more than half my life. But anyway, who's counting at this point? As someone who's been into music for a long time, for me, there comes a point where all the other music that's out there kind of becomes boring. And I don't mean that it's bad or that I don't like it, because I don't think it's bad, and I do like other music than jazz. But as far as playing it, if I'm going to spend my time playing an instrument and growing and deepening my experience of playing an instrument, jazz kind of becomes, in my opinion, the only choice there is. It's not even like there's a choice. It it's like gravity. It just sort of pulls you, and you kind of can't get out, even if you wanted to, which I don't. But you get my point. It's like, it's the only thing that really has the depth and breadth and richness, and the rabbit hole just goes on forever. Tell me another kind of music. I mean, I'm sure there are. And maybe there's, like, I don't know, maybe Indian music or something, which I don't know anything about. But you get my point. That's why jazz survives. That's why it's special.
Yeah, absolutely. So everything's going to come down to this. Everyone has their version or their interpretation of who they think you are. Your family, your friends, your fans. But you know yourself best. Who do you think you are?
Man, what a question. Well, I mean, I in light of the last question, I feel like I'm a seeker. I think I've always been a seeker. I feel like I have not been made to want excessively in this life, and so I seek for meaning and a meaningful life in whatever way whatever way I'm meant to, and so for me that continually returns me back to the violin and to expressing some kind of meaning, through that instrument. And so I'm a violin player and I'm a seeker. I think those are that's kind of what it is, for better or worse.
That's a great way to wrap everything up. Adam, thank you for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz. Thank you for all the music you put out there in Kansas City, and I appreciate it.
Oh man, thanks for reaching out. Thanks for taking your time to do this, and I appreciate you, Joe.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest cats in Kansas City and spots all over the globe, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Adam for his time, music, and adding to this Kansas City scene. If you would like to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com. And for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.